Are you having trouble with intermediate or even complex math problems at the high school, college, or university level? Then maybe it's time you check out the affordable online math tutoring service Galaxy Maths. Galaxy Maths offers top quality, experienced academic teachers helping you out with your math problems, whether it be in the classroom or even in quarantine. And it comes with available customer service as well as a free revision if you're not satisfied. I thank Galaxy Maths for sponsoring this video. Check them out. The link will be down below in the description. So we're going to continue our look back at the Star Wars prequel trilogy after watching the Clone Wars, now that that's over with, and we can really dissect these movies one more time, and I'm going to give my thoughts on them now upon rewatching episodes 1, 2, and 3. I already did my review for episode 1. It's not really so much a review, it's more so like a thoughts and analysis, because I'm assuming that most of you have seen these movies probably maybe even dozens of times, right? Like I have. So you know the movies, but now looking back and watching them after seeing the Clone Wars, maybe our perspective has changed. So I want to do videos about that. Now, one thing that I did not mention in the last video that I regret not mentioning in the Phantom Menace review is the amazing sound design. One thing that I will say about the prequel trilogy that it's just unmatchable, that even the sequel trilogy couldn't really hit as good as Lucas did, is the incredible sound. If you have a surround sound system in your home, or even if you don't, even if you just have like maybe just 2 speakers, but you're watching it up close, you have the speakers far apart, you can really appreciate the clashing of the lightsabers with the music and the sound mixing. These are things that Lucas was unbelievably good at, right? Whoever his sound engineer was, and I'm sorry I forget the guy's name, but just really, really, really good stuff. Across the board, by the way, all prequels have this as a pro. So I'm going to throw that in there just so that we get it out of the way. Now, Attack of the Clones. Most people, the issue with this movie that I always hear is that the movie has really bad dialogue and that the love scenes are cringe. And that, to me, is fair. But it's one of those things where, as a heterosexual male, I find Natalie Portman to be incredibly attractive in this movie. She's very, very beautiful. And watching it this time, the love scenes were still poorly written and cringy. And, you know, it's an unrealistic love story in many, many ways. Anakin does come off like a creeper, right? She comes off like, you know, uninterested. And then she suddenly becomes interested, which makes sense because she's alone with him. You know, it makes sense she's alone with him on Naboo for a while, right? And that kind of happens when you're alone with somebody who's attractive, you know, and so on and so forth. But because she's so damn beautiful, like, watching it again, it's sort of like, it didn't bother me so much. I just kept looking at her. Like, Natalie Portman has an unbelievable smile in this movie. Like, this is like her hottest, I think, of any movie, if I'm being honest. So it kind of softened the blow a bit. But that aside, you know, we're not here to talk about how hot Natalie Portman was back then. We're here to talk about the movie. And, you know, the dialogue is bad. And one thing I did notice upon reviewing it is that this could have actually been fixed in the editing room. I feel like if they had those deleted scenes that were cut out of this movie, that were shot and everything, they're on the DVD and the Blu-ray, of Anakin and Padme going to her parents' house and, like, her introducing Anakin to her parents, that is actually more realistic and more powerful than any of the love crap in this movie. If they had put those deleted scenes in this movie, I think the love story would have made more sense. I really feel that way. Let me know in the comment section if you agree with me, if you know what I'm talking about. I think that those scenes were crucial in building up that connection between Anakin and Padme. I think that's important, and it sucks that they left it out. It really, really does, because it was important. Now, but putting that aside, this movie's very, very long, and boy, does it feel long. I think the problems with this movie go far and away beyond the script. I think the problems with this film, looking at it now, is a couple of things. Number one, it is very long, and it drags. I mean, there are parts of this movie that drag and drag and drag and drag and drag. In fact, there are parts where I'm watching it now that I completely forgot. Like, there's scenes in this movie, and I've seen every Star Wars movie, especially the first 6, many times. And there are scenes that I kind of like forgot about. that I didn't even remember being in this film. So that should tell you that this movie's very forgettable. This is the most forgettable Star Wars film, and it's also one of the worst ones. And I think part of the reason is that it drags big time. 4-act structure, but also the other problem with the film is that it looks incredibly unrealistic, to where the fact that the movie's boring and unrealistic to me, because of the fact that it was shot on digital and everything's blue screen except for 1 or 2 scenes, it really takes away from this movie. Especially with like 1080p and 4K, like it looks really fake, especially close to the end when you have that one scene of like the droids and the clone troopers having this big battle in the desert. It looks like PS2 graphics. It does not look good. And I know if they redid that now, it would look way better, even with CGI effects. But the CGI technology we had in 2002 or 2001, whenever this movie was actually finished, it didn't work. It just doesn't work. And it really kind of hurts the movie. Now, that being said, these kinds of fights with clones and droids, at the time they had no emotion, because we had no connection to the clones or the droids, especially the clones. They were new. This movie established the clones. So we had no emotional investment. But after watching the Clone Wars TV show, which is why we're going back and even doing these videos, I can kind of see like, okay, I'm a little bit more invested now in the clones, and who they were and whatnot, even though we didn't meet Rex yet and we didn't know anything about these guys. It's still like, it still is more power because we got to meet them later on. So, but still, like, these scenes, like those scenes at the end of the movie, would have been a lot better, I think, in the Clone Wars TV show, right? When they did it there, it worked, in my opinion. It was made for that kind of environment. Again, I have a lot to say about this movie. The effects look pretty bad. Now, there are things I like about this movie, obviously. Ewan McGregor's amazing. He is a great actor no matter what is given to him. I really like sort of the early parts of the film. Like, I like the whole plan of Anakin and Obi-Wan to have like the bounty hunter try to kill Amidala, but they're waiting for him outside and this and that. I like all that good stuff. Anakin jumping out into the streets of Coruscant, like that scene. I like the scene because we get to see the city of Coruscant, or it's the whole planet city, but like, we see like how terrifying it is to be that high up, but you never really feel like the character's in danger at all. Like, Anakin is just so overly brave in this movie, and I don't want to say he's a Gary Stu, but in that scene, I think he is. I mean, the guy jumps over the damn ship and just flies down by himself, like falls down by himself, like with no fear. To me, that does take balls. Obviously, he's not really a Gary Stu, but that scene, he was almost too good for his own good, if that makes sense. But it doesn't really hurt the movie. I did think that Hayden Christensen, his performance, people always criticize performance, but I feel like it was the script just as much as him. You know what I mean? The script was just as bad. The script had a lot of issues. The story's not that bad. In fact, there are things about this movie that I do love, okay? I love the Obi-Wan murder mystery storyline where he's trying to find out what's going on, and the Sifo Dyas thing where they deleted the plan from the Jedi archives because they're hiding this clone army, and the whole story of Obi-Wan trying to find out just what the hell's going on, meeting Jango Fett, which is one of the best characters in this movie, and them having a little fight in the rain, which I thought was really good. That Jango Fett fight in the rain was fantastic because they showed that Sith are not the only characters that can kill Jedi or beat Jedi, because Jango Fett won that fight. Even though he did not kill Obi-Wan, he did escape, and he was able to put Obi-Wan down long enough to escape. So he won that fight. So to me, I like that. And I really like, the scene of the clone army. Dun, 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 dun. Like, that was a great scene. The people on Kamino, like, all that whole sequence was great. The scene in the asteroid fight, though, between Jango and Obi-Wan, this felt more like, let's squeeze in a space fight just for the hell of it. That's what that felt like to me. We're going to squeeze in a space fight just for the hell of it. Some good, cool, like, things in that fight, like the exploding sort of neutron bomb type of, weaponry that Slave One has. That was cool, right? but it didn't feel like it added to the plot at all whatsoever. It was just there to be an action scene. And then we have, of course, the Amidala Anakin stuff, which, you know, some of it ranged from being decent to being downright terrible. But again, Natalie Portman's hot. And then we have sort of the shift in the plot where Anakin goes back home because he senses his mother might be close to dying or whatever. And then we have that subplot where he finds Watto. And that's actually good stuff. I feel like that stuff was good. But by that point, see, it sucks because by that point I'm already starting to feel tired because the movie had been going on for a while. Remember, 4-act structure. This is Act 3 now. So Anakin meets the Lars family, you know, which would be, again, a tie-in to Episode 4, which is not even necessary, but it made sense here in the sense that we had to have this moment of Anakin's mother dying because it was his worst fear come to fruition, and that would be the beginning of his path towards the darkness. And the way he slaughtered the scene where he slaughters the Sand People, you know, the Tusken Raiders, you know, and it cuts out. That I thought that was pretty well acted by Hayden. I got to give him credit for that. I did feel like when he said, you know, and this is something that's been criticized to death, but when he says things like, you know, I slaughtered them all, the women, the children, and then Padme comes back with, well, we all get angry sometimes. Dude, your boyfriend just killed an entire village, and no matter which way you slice it, if you think that the Sand People are inherently evil, the Tusken Raiders, and you think the women and children deserve to die, that's kind of racist. Even though the Tusken Raiders are not real people, you can't sit there and say that an alien race is inherently evil like that in this universe, the way the Force works and everything. No, it doesn't work. So Padme's pretty much saying, oh, you know, she's finding out her boyfriend killed all these fucking guys, these children and women, innocent people. Oh, well, you get angry sometimes. It's the most unrealistic and stupid love story ever. It really is. Like, that scene made it stupid, right? I kind of wish that he had never told her that. Like, I wish he would have just said, I slaughtered them like animals, and not said the women and children, right? Because then at least she would have thought it was just the warriors, you know, or maybe he just killed the warriors and escaped and didn't harm any women or children. Then at least it would make more sense. You know, he got attacked, his mom died, fine. But killing the children and did nothing, they were innocent in all of this, and you're okay with it, and then later on, in the very next act, you tell him you love him, it didn't make any sense, dude. What did he do to make you fall for him? Kill people? Is that how sadistic you are? Just really bad stuff, dude. Like, this movie sucks. I'm sorry, but this movie, looking back on this movie now, it is not good because of things like this. Just, I don't know if people, obviously we know that people were too scared to tell George Lucas that he was out of his fucking mind, right? Because they didn't want to lose their jobs. They're all scared of him. You know, Red Letter Media covered all this. But, damn, dude, you know what I mean? Like, it blew my mind. It just, like, whoa, like, and I know that some people will sit there and say, well, you know, there are women who fall in love with crazy murderers. Yes, there are, but this is supposed to be a major senator and a good person, not somebody who has sociopathic tendencies and has, like, because usually women that fall in love with crazy people, or vice versa, men that fall in love with crazy women, usually they have a codependency issue. She doesn't have that. She was single for 10 years, presumably single, or whatever. She wasn't with anybody. She was a senator. So it's like, I mean, she probably wasn't single, but, you know, she wasn't in love. You know, like, how you going to fall in love with a guy after he did that? It's just kind of scary. So that was dumb. You know, Jango Fett, of course, like I said, is one of my favorite characters in this movie. Everything about him. He's not aligned with anybody. He's doing Dooku a favor. He doesn't care about the Empire or the destruction of, you know, the Jedi. He just wants to get paid and get the hell out, right? And even though he died, his legacy would continue because not just with Boba Fett, but with the clones. And at the end of the day, when you really think about it, Jango Fett was very instrumental in the death of the Jedi, the Purge, because he's the one who they cloned. You see what I'm saying? And so even though he was killed by Mace Windu in this film, it's like he got his revenge. You know, it really was a revenge thing. You know, seeing all the Jedi fight together at the end was something I was looking forward to as a kid for many, 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 many years. And it was a big letdown in this movie because they're jobbers. Like, other than Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Mace, you know, in that scene in the Coliseum, They're just jobbers. They're not. Most of them just. They weren't that impressive. We didn't get enough scenes of them really being badasses, and they had been built up as being so. I didn't like that, but I did like the Colosseum. The stuff with the monster and like Obi-Wan and Anakin having quips with each other, and then Padme getting involved, like that was all pretty good stuff. And her being involved in the fight was good. Like all that stuff was great. And Dooku being there, of course. Christopher Lee is awesome. Christopher Lee giving Obi-Wan the warning of a Dark Lord of the Sith, known as Darth Sidious, being in control. Like that gave me chills. But it also made me realize how stupid the Jedi were, because if you watch Clone Wars season 6, it's pretty much made clear that you'd have to be an idiot to not know that the Chancellor was a Sith Lord, and yet they were kind of dumb. And like Luke explained later on, they're hubris, but the Jedi are pretty dumb. That being said, though, Christopher Lee is awesome. I mean, he's amazing, no matter what. He's always going to be awesome. God rest his soul. He's a legend, unquestionably. And then the final lightsaber duel, I really like how they did the Anakin part where it was dark and all you could see is the lightsabers, but it was dumb how they were like twirling them above their heads. It just didn't make any sense. But the aesthetics of it looked good, right? But I gotta be honest, that Yoda scene was embarrassing. I did not like the Yoda scene whatsoever. The Yoda Palpatine fight in the next movie is great. I'll get to that in my next review. But the Yoda scene with Dooku, the way he's screaming, like it's really dumb. And I know that people loved that scene when the movie came out. Later on, hated it. I kind of felt similar vibes. Like he couldn't even finish off Dooku, who was powerful and a great swordsman. But he's over here He almost beat Palpatine in the next movie, but he couldn't finish off Dooku in this one. To me, just bad power scaling. Bad Star Wars power scaling. Did not like that. Did not like the Yoda stuff at all. It was better when they were just trading force blows, because Yoda could have probably outdone him easily in the force and just grabbed him and picked him up. So we've seen people get picked up and thrown around. Yoda wasn't strong enough to do that. Was Dooku that powerful? It just very weird stuff. But I'm not gonna lie, seeing Christopher Lee on that little bike is just, I thought it was funny. I don't know why I laughed at that. But the most painful scene in this movie, the one scene that I wish was cut out of the entire film, is the freaking droid factory scene. It just went on forever. It felt like a video game. It just, oh my god, like Padme running underneath the little smasher things like Mega Man. And I love Mega Man, I love video games, but it was so unnecessary. It was unneeded. It should have just arrived and been captured and gone right to the Colosseum. It was, again, another action piece for the sake of there being an action piece and not for the sake of the story. And I think that hurt the movie. I think it really hurt the film. And the movie's just very long, and it's not fun to look at because of the bad special effects of the time, and the fake background. So to me, it still stands as being one of the lower tier Star Wars films. Even the Clone Wars couldn't save this one. So, again, there are things I like. Don't get me wrong. There are the whole Jango Fett stuff and Obi-Wan's hunt for him I thought was great. That's good stuff. And the Kamino stuff is great. And Christopher Lee is great. But, man, I really wanted to see Mace Windu and Dooku fight. They kind of teased that, we never got it. But, yeah, I don't know. That's how I felt about the movie. What do you think? Let me know in the comments about how you feel about Attack of the Clones now, after Clone Wars is over. To me, they could have done a much better job of establishing this war. But there is one thing I do appreciate about episodes 2 and 3, and that is the rise of Palpatine, how he was able to get emergency powers, and how he was able to use those powers to kind of manipulate the entire Senate, and how he was able to eventually have the Jedi be massacred. It was all very well constructed. He's the smartest man in the galaxy. And that was good stuff. The rise of Palpatine was good in episodes 1, 2, and 3. We got to give him credit for that. It's good writing. Let me know what you think, and we'll talk soon.